The tide is a very powerful thing, isn't it? It's very regular, isn't it? You can count on the tide. The tide goes out, and it comes in, and it goes out again, always taking with it some of the land that we have been standing on. That's normal. That's how God made this world. It's to be expected. And this, brothers and sisters, is what most congregations look like. The tide comes in and it goes out. And each time it goes out, it takes some of the land we have been building on. And the question is not how do we stop the tide, but how might we build higher up on the land? How might we share love of God, pass on love of God to younger and younger and younger hearts, like Siweli, who just walked in with his love, right? How might we do that? Thousands of years ago, the Lord God, Yahweh, gave God's people the key to passing on faith, trust, hope in the God of Abraham and Sarah to future generations. And so we had a Jacob, and we had a Benjamin, and we had Joshua, and we had Moses, and we had on and on and on, all the way through Jesus of Nazareth. And the command God gave is called the Shema. And it's kind of a kit, if you will, of passing on the faith, because it comes with its own instructions. Do you remember as Jordan was reading, this is the Shema. It begins, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And as Jesus, when he was asked, what's the greatest commandment? He answered with the Shema. Hear, O Israel. Starts with listening. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. The Lord our God is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength. And when Jesus remembers this, he remembers also how in the passage from Deuteronomy, as Jordan read to us, God says, how do we remember this? We put it on our hand. We recite it to our children. We talk about it in our homes. We put it on our foreheads. We put it on the lintels of our door. We surround ourselves. We soak. We marinate in this truth. The Lord, our God, is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. What does that mean? All your strength, all your soul. And this is what Jesus said is the greatest of all commandments. And he added, and a second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Right? This is the key to passing faith from generation to generation. Well, some congregations have multiple generations and some don't. Here's a bit of wisdom. All churches grow old. There is a tide. And the tide goes in and the tide goes out. But strategic churches are growing young. Ooh, what does that mean? Growing young. Announcing our new project, Growing Young. And if you can't read the type underneath, it says, helping young people discover and love your church. Sound good? At the last April church council meeting, I shared information about this new initiative in our annual conference called Growing Young. It's an initiative in partnership with the Fuller Youth Institute. The Fuller Youth Institute. And what is happening is that congregations are being invited to apply to be part of the first cohort, the first class, if you will, of 30 congregations who will be chosen to begin a year-long training. I think it begins with a summit this fall in October. And all those congregations come together for a summit right here at St. Mark's in Sacramento. And then they spend a year doing webinars together, and they are assigned coaches so that when they set goals, they have someone who can continually help them move toward those goals. And they do an assessment of their readiness. And at the end of it all, they do another summit. And hopefully celebrate what has changed in their churches. And it's all about helping congregations reshape their vision and their ministries in the hope of growing young. Still sound good? What do you think people ask about it? Does it cost money? Of course it does. This program has a kind of a tiered schedule. And for our size congregation, it would be about $1,500. Is that a lot of money to grow young? Some of you might think it is a lot of money. And if you do, I'm here to tell you that the Anderson Fund, your Anderson Fund for youth, earmarked, designated for youth, has, Lourdes, I want to say somewhere in the neighborhood of $80,000. Is that right? Yes. Our treasurer says yes. Is $1,500 a lot? No. $1,500 is not a problem. So the next question we discussed as your council was, well, could we be ready by the May 15th deadline? This is April. Second week of April we're meeting. Could we be ready by the May 15th deadline to discern whether this program at this time is a fit for Centennial? And we discussed that. And we decided that the most important thing would be that we needed to have specific young people of this congregation informed and committed to help lead the effort before we sign on. So we gave ourselves a month, and I said, okay, so everybody talk to one young person. Doesn't matter who it is. Talk to one young person in this congregation and see where we are. A month later at the May, this earlier month, second Tuesday of the month, we met again, and we found that we had not done that. And so Centennial will not be in one of what they call the early adopters, right, cohort. And the 30 congregations that are selected are going to be announced at the annual conference session. So what we did was we said, okay, now we're giving ourselves a year to be ready, to ask the question, is this what Centennial needs at this time in our life together and in the lives of our young people, and to bring our young people together and talk about who will help lead us. It's not just young people. I mean, there are adults who need to step forward, right? That's what this is about. So I've done some work understanding the Fuller Youth Institute because I've heard a lot about them, but I don't know them. They are based in Pasadena. But everything I have heard and learned has really impressed me, and I want to share it with you. First, let me read the tiny print down there. It says, Fuller Youth Institute, equipping teens with the lifelong faith they need. Do we believe they need faith? Or we just kind of hope they get some? Their vision, change the way the world sees young people. They say, we believe in young people. We believe in the church. Let's make the church the best place for young people to grow. Does that ring bells? It does with me. Wouldn't that be amazing? For us, this community of people of multi-generations and cultures and languages, be the best place for young people in Sacramento to grow. Can you see that? How do we see our young people, Centennial? Do we only see them as kids who need fun fellowship events and need to go on service projects where they sweat a little bit and need to be part of big youth gatherings and hopefully have them around as helpers when we want them to wait tables? Is that how we see young people? Or do we see them as people fully gifted and capable of sharing their love of God with future generations and those around them? Of helping transform life as it's lived right here in this capital city and beyond? Do we see them like that? I want to close with a love letter that the Fuller Institute has written to young people. To all our young people, an open love letter. Teenagers and young adults, if you are here in this room and you are between the ages of 13 and 30, this letter was written for you, and it was written for the rest of us. Shema Yisrael, listen, Israel, people of God, for us to listen. We believe God is especially fond of you. In a world that doesn't always know what to do with you, God is crazy about you. While others may roll their eyes at your choices, God sees you and gets you. Forgive us adults for expecting you to act like an adult when you aren't one yet. In a world that denies you the chance to be who you are, we claim you as ours. As you're wrestling with the pressure to achieve and perform as individuals, we call you to be part of us. When you've blown it and think no one cares, we are trying to pay attention to you. Forgive us for at times being too busy to extend our welcome mat out to you. We care for every single one of you. The 23-year-old child of immigrants wrestling with sometimes clashing cultural identities. The 18-year-old senior, both eager and scared to move away from home. The 14-year-old being offered drugs for the first time. The 12-year-old still figuring out the combination lock for their new PE locker, and everyone in between. Every race and ethnicity, and every socioeconomic status, suburban, urban, and rural, those who are currently part of a church, as well as those who are far, far away. Forgive us for seeming to play favorites instead of equally valuing every single one. We believe our world needs you, your passion, your empathy, your drive to improve and create. Forgive us for being preoccupied by our devices and ignoring you. Forgive us for sometimes turning our backs toward you and asking too much from you. Deep down, we want to offer our best to you. We couldn't imagine our lives without you. May it be so, Centennial, with us, with us. Is it an impossible dream that we might grow young? Maybe it is, but for God, all things are possible. Thanks be to God.